Greetings to everyone out there in the NoDQ galaxy. Welcome to NoDQ video here on NoDQ.com and the YouTube channel, youtube.com/AaronRiftNoDQ. This is the final episode of NoDQ video until after the greatest Royal Rumble of all time. The greatest Royal Rumble, the GER, is this Friday. I almost said Sunday because I'm used to Sunday. Yes, it is an unusual day for a WWE pay-per-view event / network special, but nonetheless, NoDQ.com will have you covered with the latest news and results coverage. So stay tuned, and with that being said, let's get down to your questions. First one today comes from Offman Rules, good friend of the site. With Asuka's streak over, could you not only see Charlotte versus Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown Women's title next year at WrestleMania 35, but can we finally see a women's match be the main event, meaning the last match of the show? Yes, and I have talked about this before, the idea that with Ronda Rousey in WWE, there is a very realistic possibility now of the women finally being able to not just main event a major WWE show like they did at the Royal Rumble, but main event the biggest show, WrestleMania. And I think that at this point, it will happen if Ronda Rousey can stay hot in WWE. That is the big question. Will Ronda's run in the long run be a success? For the short term, it's working out for WWE and Ronda Rousey, definitely. But will she cool off? That is the question. We'll have to see how her feuds over the next year play out, how she evolves as a character and as a performer. Charlotte is red hot right now. I think if all the stars align, Charlotte stays hot, Ronda stays hot, you can very well see this match main event WrestleMania as the final match of the evening, and the women go all the way with this revolution to the point where they're the final match at WrestleMania. Plus, I think the fans would like that a lot more than Roman Reigns being in the main event for the 5th straight year. Just my feeling. Got this one here from Garrett Mills. I think Braun Strowman should win Money in the Bank. Your thoughts? I don't think it's necessary. I don't think Strowman needs that gimmick. I think the Money in the Bank contract / briefcase gimmick is best for a rising star, first of all, and also a heel. Typically, I think it's best for a heel to have the Money in the Bank contract, since they will usually be taking advantage of a very weakened opponent and seizing that opportunity. Edge was the first guy to do that, making himself the ultimate opportunist. We have seen some baby faces do it, however, like CM Punk, at least the first year he cashed it in, and Rob Van Dam. In his case, he cashed it in and then gave John Cena advance notice, like a babyface would do. He said, I'm going to give you the time and the place and the date, and we're going to have the match. And of course, that was One Night Stand, which was an advantage for RVD, but at least RVD was giving John Cena the courtesy of telling him in advance where the match was going to take place. Strowman doesn't need it for those reasons. He's a babyface character now, and he doesn't need a gimmick to beat a guy. He doesn't need that advantage. He's Braun freaking Strowman. So I don't see the purpose of even putting Braun Strowman in the match. Got this one here from TJS. If Braun Strowman doesn't win the greatest Royal Rumble match, is it a sign that WWE has given up on him as a top guy and he's stuck as a mid-card or comedy figure? I don't think so. Now, in my personal opinion, Strowman should win the greatest Royal Rumble. Just something else to keep him hot. I don't think him losing will ruin him, though, or be a sign that WWE is giving up on him necessarily. I could see Strowman getting eliminated with 10 guys tossing him over. That has happened before. It happened with Andre the Giant all those years ago, where you had pretty much half of the participants in the Royal Rumble. I think one time it happened at the Royal Rumble. I think it was 1990. And then I think a few years earlier in a Battle Royal, everybody ganged up on Andre and eliminated him. So I could see that happening. There's an easy way to get Braun Strowman out of the match. I hope that Baron Corbin doesn't eliminate him again. I think that that would be a mistake. But if Strowman doesn't win, I think a good way to get rid of him is to do that gimmick where 10 or 15 guys gang up on him and throw him out that way. I don't think it'll hurt Strowman. This one comes from James. Hey Aaron, do you think that Big Cass will at least be in the Final Four in the Greatest Royal Rumble? Being in a feud with Braun and apparently receiving a push, it would make sense for him to come close. I agree on that. I think that there's going to be a lot of question marks about this match. With 50 guys, it's unprecedented. It's something we haven't seen before. I don't know how it's going to be booked, how it's going to be laid out. But I would think at the very least, Big Cass is going to have a strong showing in the Rumble match. I could see him pulling a Diesel or a Kane even and eliminating maybe the most guys in the match. Maybe we'll see Big Cass dump out 10 guys, Strowman dumps out 10 guys, and it's the two of them for a while. Maybe they eliminate each other. Maybe they do that gimmick where they both go over the top at the same time. Or maybe Daniel Bryan eliminates both Strowman and Big Cass. Kind of like Shawn Michaels eliminating Vader and Mabel at the same time. Although I think that that would make Strowman look weak, to have Bryan eliminate both of them. But if WWE is going all out with Bryan again and they're going to push him as a top star, then I could see that happening. But I think Cass will have a good run, maybe Final Four. But either way, I think he will eliminate some guys and he will have his presence felt in the match in some form. I would at least assume so. Got this one here from LCP. Do you think John Cena's marriage proposal at WrestleMania 33 was a waste of time now that they are broken up? I think them breaking up has definitely hurt the lasting impact of that moment. But then again, look at Randy Savage and Elizabeth, which in my opinion was one of the all-time great WrestleMania moments. The two of them finally reuniting. In real life, they got divorced a year later. So, yeah. That, you can't really look at real life and compare it to the storyline, although it was allegedly a real-life proposal at WrestleMania. So, yeah, I think in that sense, it did hurt the lasting value of that segment. It won't mean quite as much looking back on it, knowing, well, it was a real-life proposal, and a year later they broke up. It sucks. I've said this before. It just sucks that the whole thing fell apart, and they did that big proposal, and now the relationship is over. This one comes from Mr. Yuck. Have you seen Impact recently? I get this question like every couple of weeks. If so, thoughts on the announced team or solo acts at times by Sanjay Dutt. Sometimes he is better than three-man ones on Raw or SmackDown Live, that's for sure. I disagree on that. I was not a big fan of Sanjay Dutt, and spoiler alert, you might want to skip ahead here a minute. He was apparently replaced at the Impact Wrestling tapings this week by Don Callis. So now the announced team is Josh Matthews and Don Callis. The problem with Dutt is even though he's a wrestler, and sometimes it's good to get a wrestler's perspective with the commentary, he just sounded so generic and too fanboyish. He was like, ooh, look at that move. What a move. And yeah, I wasn't really a big fan of his commentary. It felt too indie-ish. It didn't feel like a major league announcer broadcasting a show. It felt like some indie wrestler talking about an indie show, which it pretty much is at this point. Time will tell if Don Callis can step up to the plate. Impact really needs a good commentary team, and Josh Matthews isn't good either, in my opinion. It's funny because I wasn't really a big fan of Don West and Mike Tenay back in the day, but with the recent announced teams, I almost feel like Mike Tenay and Don West are Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler compared to the recent guys that have done commentary. But yeah, Sanjay Dutt wasn't doing it for me at all, to answer your question perfectly honestly. Got this one here from Kyle Allen. Is Hulk Hogan the greatest locker room politician ever? Well, let me tell you something, brother. You could argue that. You could argue that Hulk Hogan was a master politician. There were all these stories about Hogan knowing when to show up and when to disappear and doing these things to get himself in the good graces of management. In WCW, Hogan would take time off when Nitro was preempted because he knew the ratings would be down. So Hogan did all these little different things. Definitely one of the smartest men in the wrestling business. And he knew when to show up, when to leave, when to strategically, put people over. Look at 1990 with Wrestlemania. Hogan was doing a movie, so of course he's going to go ahead and be the company man and put over the next in line, the Ultimate Warrior. And then when business was down, Hogan was gone, he came right back in and won the world title again. He took time off when the steroid scandal happened. He came back, won the world title again. He went to WCW. He did well there. He put over Goldberg at the Georgia Dome. But the funny story about that is WCW had already sold a ton of tickets for that, and Hogan and Goldberg was scheduled to be a dark match. When Hogan found out about the ticket sales, that's when he decided to have the match be on television and put over Goldberg because he knew the crowd was going to be record-breaking for WCW. Very smart man, that Hulk Hogan. The other guy you could argue is Triple H. He got with Shawn Michaels, and that helped his career, and then he married the boss's daughter, and he became the guy in WWE. For several years, he was the world champion on many occasions, and he's next in line to take over the company once Vince is gone. So you could argue either Hogan or Triple H. Kevin Nash is another guy that a lot of people would argue was the greatest wrestling politician in terms of making the most money for doing the least amount of work. I mean, that's been Kevin Nash's reputation, that he was able to get those big paychecks without having to do much of anything and live off of his previous success. Got this one here from Alexander Rago. Hey Aaron, what is the point in bringing back Bobby Lashley when he has no story or direction? It's absolutely pointless. Number one way for him to get lost in the shuffle, in my opinion. Well, I think it's too soon to say how Bobby Lashley is going to work out in WWE. I think the jury is still out on that one. There are several big matches you could do with Bobby Lashley, which I think WWE should definitely build up towards. One of them is with the guy he teamed up with on Raw, Braun Strowman. Potentially, we could see Strowman versus a heel Bobby Lashley. Lashley could go heel for that match. Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar is a match I definitely think WWE should do if they're keeping Brock Lesnar around, if they're going to keep paying him the big bucks. Lashley and Lesnar is a match people have been wanting to see for years. They both have the MMA backgrounds. And then, of course, you can do an inter-promotional match now. Inter-brand match, I should say, not really promotion. You can do Bobby Lashley versus Samoa Joe. There's some options for Bobby Lashley. There's several dream matches. You can get some big matches out of him over a year or two. And after that, we'll just have to see if he continues to connect with the audience or if people just get sick of him. It feels like a lot of fans aren't really on the Bobby Lashley bandwagon, but maybe that'll change. Who knows? Maybe because he was in Impact for so long, people have a negative attitude towards him and they see him as damaged goods. Who knows? Got this one here from Benny. Thoughts on the rumor of WWE trying to potentially bring in women's tag team titles? I have talked about this before. I'm okay with it as long as WWE merges a few of the titles. One set of women's tag team titles for both brands. The champions get to be on each brand. And then you do the same thing with the women's title, the singles title, and the tag team titles. You have one set of tag team titles and, quite frankly, one world champion for both brands. And you keep the US and IC titles as brand exclusive. I like that idea. That's what I would do. But if WWE is going to have a women's tag team titles on Raw and then another set on SmackDown, I'm not a fan of that. I think there's too many titles as it is. So if you're going to add one, I think you need to subtract a couple. All right, that'll wrap it up for this edition of NoDQ Video. Thank you all very much for tuning in. I appreciate your viewership. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest regarding the Greatest Royal Rumble. I will be doing live play-by-play coverage. Pick up a NoDQ.com beanie. Beanies are back in stock, as well as the NoDQ.com beach ball. You can send a PayPal payment to NoDQMisc@gmail.com. It's $10 for the beach ball, $20 for the beanie, or $28 for both of them. If you're in Canada, there's an extra $10 charge, $15 charge if you're anywhere else in the world. Support the website. You can also pick up a t-shirt at ProWrestlingTees.com, search NoDQ, or check out the link in the description box. And that's all I got for this edition of NoDQ Video. Thank you all again. Please spread the word, tell a friend, and I will see you guys next time.